Let's get right into it. And I'll start by saying that during previous outlooks that we've done, I have mentioned prior notable hurricanes as a benchmark of sorts. But as we look ahead, I think it's important to point out that past is, of course, not necessarily prologue when it comes to the hurricanes of the future. This season is looking to be an extraordinary one in a number of ways, based on our data and models with the El Niño, La Niña playing out a significant role. The key this year, as in any year, is to get prepared and stay prepared. We're going to be emphasizing that throughout these comments. It's the best way to reduce risk, especially the risk of potential loss of life. Our forecasters now are better equipped than ever, especially thanks to critical investments from the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. President Biden's Investing in America agenda has actually allowed us to enable rapid deployment of things like advanced water models, allowed us to build near real-time, high-resolution flood inundation maps across the country, and we've also begun our path toward next-generation radar. These investments are critical. We know communities can be devastated from the impacts of hurricanes. The associated wind, storm surge, and flooding produce damage that affects local economies, it affects livelihoods for years after the storm has passed. Last season, even with most Atlantic tropical activity remaining offshore from the United States, tropical cyclones caused approximately $4 billion in damages for the contiguous U.S. And in the impacts of Hurricane Hilary added in the western U.S., that number rises to nearly $5 billion. The Department of Commerce and NOAA continue to work with partners to prepare for future storms and respond to the economic impacts inflicted on communities so that they can recover more quickly in the aftermath of the storm. With the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season beginning next weekend, NOAA is prepared to support our nation today with the most accurate and reliable information and environmental intelligence for the official government outlook. We will continue throughout the season to provide you with the official warnings and watches, of course, and our preparation for the season represents a whole of NOAA approach. I'd like to say just a word about what that whole of NOAA approach means. We recognize all of NOAA's 6 line offices play a critical role during, ahead of, and after a hurricane or tropical storm has impacted the United States. You'll hear shortly from Ken Graham, the head of the National Weather Service, on his office's preparation for the season ahead. I'd like to take just a moment to recognize NOAA's other investments and advancements related to hurricanes in all of our line offices. Our research line office, the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, is going to put into operation this season the 6th version of the Modular Ocean Model, or MOM6 as we call it. When we couple that with the Hurricane Analysis and Forecast System, or HAFS as we call it, which began running within the Unified Forecast System framework last year, MOM6 is going to improve representation of the key role that the ocean plays in driving hurricane intensity. Something I can tell you as a card-carrying oceanographer warms my heart. I would add that this is just one example of OAR's research and modeling efforts. However, to have good modeling, we've got to have reliable and accessible data. So NOAA's National Environmental Satellite Data and Information System, NESDIS, has end-to-end responsibility for developing much of the critical data that we need to produce the forecasts. Next month, the satellite GOES-U is scheduled to launch, which will provide atmospheric and oceanic data critical to our efforts to forecast tropical activity. NOAA's National Ocean Service supports and strengthens preparedness, response, and recovery efforts to improve community resiliency. NOS provides those critical coastal survey overflights, which allow us to reopen harbors and ports and ultimately revive economies with great speed and efficiency. Our Office of Marine and Aviation Operations plays a critical role in obtaining data from storms while they are over the ocean. In particular, our Hurricane Hunter aircraft provide one of the only means for collecting data directly inside the storm. It's these data that provide the most improved outputs from our forecast models, and in fact, Hurricane Hunter aircraft data were critical to observing the rapid intensification that we saw of Hurricane Otis in the eastern Pacific last season, which, as you'll recall, made landfall as a devastating Cat 5 hurricane near Acapulco. OMAO, Marine and Aviation Operations, will continue to fly our P-3 Hurricane Hunter aircraft into storms for as long as we can, while also we are continuing efforts to secure critical funding that's necessary to replace our aging current fleet with updated planes. And NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service is critical in the recovery efforts of after storms past, including things like assessment of reefs and the conduct of coral rescue and stabilization. These are key efforts to help marine environments and local economies recover. Let me just say a quick word about our partnerships, too. That was my run-through on the internal, the introspective aspect, but preparing for and responding to hurricanes requires that we at NOAA work closely with our partners in the federal government, the private sector, state governments, local jurisdictions, and of course, NGOs and academia. And I'm delighted today to be joined by the FEMA Deputy Administrator, Eric Hooks, who will have an opportunity to share with you some of the perspectives from FEMA in just a few moments. Our two agencies, NOAA and FEMA, work very well together. We've got NOAA liaisons at FEMA National Headquarters. FEMA has liaisons presently at several Weather Service centers, including the National Hurricane Center in Miami. We value our partnership with the U.S. Navy to help fill critical observational gaps, for example by providing gliders. Navy gliders provide critical data important in improving our forecast models with inputs from data-sparse areas and at times where it's hard to collect the kind of data that we need as we see hurricanes growing and strengthening. Last year, the U.S. Air Force flew a total of 93 missions with their C-130Js during the hurricane season, providing extremely valuable information from within storms coupled with our own P-3 flights. We also work closely with many other nations, including operating Hurricane Hunter aircraft, our own Hurricane Hunter aircraft from Barbados and Curacao. This enables us to safely reach and operate within locations, including the far eastern Caribbean, areas that would otherwise be unreachable. These are just a few examples of the crucial partnerships NOAA values as we head into the 2024 hurricane season. So, where do we stand today? NOAA's Climate Prediction Center issues El Nino, Southern Oscillation, or ENSO as we call it, forecasts and discussions. The official CPC forecast issued just this month indicates a 77% chance of La Nina forming during the August-October timeframe. We know the development of La Nina can lead to weaker easterly trade winds and below average vertical wind shear in the tropical Atlantic Ocean. This type of environment can be more conducive for tropical cyclone development. Also, NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information has reported record warm water temperatures for much of the tropical Atlantic Ocean, as you see here. Forecast modeling indicates that above average sea surface temperatures are predicted during the peak months of the Atlantic hurricane season from August to October. We know warm sea surface temperatures are an important factor in rapid intensification of tropical cyclones to major hurricane status, and that major hurricanes contribute significantly to the measurement of ACE, the accumulated cyclone energy, ACE. In past years, when we've seen high ACE numbers, those have historically been the years with the most destructive hurricanes, and this season, NOAA is forecasting the second highest ACE for our May outlook. So without further ado, let's dive into the numbers for this year's Atlantic hurricane season outlook. NOAA is predicting an above average 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. Specifically, there's an 85% chance of an above normal season, a 10% chance of a near normal season, and a 5% chance of a below normal season. For the range of storms expected, NOAA calls for the following: 17 to 25 named storms with a top sustained wind of at least 39 miles per hour. Of these, 8 to 13 are forecast to become hurricanes with maximum sustained winds of at least 74 miles per hour. And 4 to 7 are forecast to become major hurricanes, that is category 3 to 5, with maximum sustained winds of at least 111 miles per hour. Of note, the forecast for named storms, hurricanes, and major hurricanes is the highest NOAA has ever issued for the May outlook. In addition, ACE projections range from 150% to 245%, which, as I previously noticed, is the second highest ACE forecast to start a season, only behind 2010. With all of that said, I'd like to take a moment to remind you now is the time to prepare and stay prepared. Remember, it only takes one storm to devastate a community. And it's prudent to prepare now because once the storm is headed your way, it all happens so rapidly, you won't have the time to plan and prepare at that point. Before I close, I'd also like to give a special thanks to the very skilled and dedicated forecasters at the National Hurricane Center in Miami, who work around the clock to deliver timely and accurate forecasts each and every hurricane season, as well as the hurricane hunters who fly hundreds of hours each hurricane season to support critical hurricane forecasting and research. I've done 6 penetrations of a hurricane in a P3, and I can tell you, my heart goes out to that team of brave aviators, and the numerous members, of course, of the emergency management community who are so critical to protecting lives and property. The experts at the Climate Prediction Center who develop seasonal outlooks, including the hurricane season outlook, who use a number of tools to help decision makers, emergency managers, and the public when preparing for the season ahead. And finally, the dedicated forecasters throughout the National Weather Service who work around the clock, 24/7, 365, in every single U.S. community to provide weather forecasts and warnings upon which every person in the nation depends. The dedication of these public servants quite literally saves lives, safeguards our communities and businesses. We need this entire team of top skilled experts to produce the NOAA seasonal outlook, which is the official outlook for the federal government.